Before we begin the Shadowlands Class Changes Alpha videos, we have a word from Mr. Menethil himself. Mr. Menethil?
All life must end.
Thank you, Mr. Menethil, and now, on with the video. Welcome to the video. My name is Nim, or Nimicry if you're feeling professional, and today we're talking about Shadowlands Alpha Class Changes. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention I stream on Twitch Saturday and Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Monday and Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll come across the screen. Don't even worry about that. But that's not why you're here. You're here for class changes. So let's take a look. As Azeroth's champions prepare to traverse into the Shadowlands, they will gain powers both new and forgotten to take on horrors that reside in the realms of death. So, a bit of overview let's start with. Classes have evolved throughout WoW's 15 years of development, and so have our philosophies on class design. With new expansions and an increasing level cap came new spells, abilities, and talents. While earning new powers is exciting and a natural part of growth in a role-playing game, eventually we began to butt up against the limits of the action bar and accessible keybind space. That's true for some classes. It happened a little earlier for some than others. I know playing a paladin, my rotation was fairly simple, but I had a lot of utility stuff for, kind of one-off situations, or lay on hands, don't die. And many of the tools and perks that had once defined certain classes became increasingly widespread, diminishing class uniqueness. To address this in the past, we made changes to the talents with Mists of Pandaria. That's when they removed a lot of the point buy system and put in every 15 levels you choose one of 3 options. Some thought it was good, some thought it was bad. On the whole, I liked the new talent system. And even removed several abilities in Warlords of Draenor. In Legion, alongside the introduction of artifact weapons, we focused on class identity and carving out a distinct fantasy for each specialization to go along with their weapon. Mechanically, this meant revamps to most of our specializations, removing several long-standing class-wide abilities, and adding new spec-specific abilities in the process. Today, in Battle for Azeroth, while specializations have unique and flashy abilities, we've heard feedback that in some cases we've moved too far away from the core of the class that initially sparked players' interest when they first created their character. At times, there is more that divides 2 specializations of the same class than there is that unites them. And I think that's true. I mean, I can play, for example, as a Holy Paladin, right? I don't have an interrupt. I'm a melee healer, and I don't have an interrupt. I lose the ability to rebuke. Or, if you follow the impact. In Shadowlands, we want to return to the idea that a specialization is about powering up a specific part of a class's kit, not narrowing down their toolset. In an expansion that's all about choice, we also want to give players more opportunities to make impactful choices, to customize their gameplay and express their own vision of how their characters engage in combat. I like that. More options, always good. Many specialization-specific abilities and spells that help define the identity of a class will once again be available class-wide. And we're reintroducing some iconic abilities to give all of Azeroth's heroes a fighting chance against the dangers ahead. Let's hit that with that applause. Of course, we like hearing the applause. In addition to these changes, players will have new Covenant class abilities to look forward to, which we will preview comprehensively in our Shadowlands and look at Covenant class and signature abilities blog. Today, we'd like to give you a look at some of what's in store for each class, including our overall goals, some cool new and returning powers, some key changes to abilities and talents. This isn't meant to be a comprehensive list of updates. These changes represent a starting point for a dialogue with the community, but this should give a good overview of what to expect. Now, for me to read all of this in one go, I did a recording earlier. It was 53 minutes. So we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is I'm going to go do each class, have its own distinct video, and the initial video will be a little longer, if only for the fact that I read the Shadowlands class philosophy and explained the process. So feel free there at this point to, if you're not interested in Death Knight, well, just leave a like, subscribe, and move on into the class that you're interested. But if you're one of those people who like to be the original edgelords of WoW, let's press on. Death Knight, former champions of the Lich King. Death Knights overwhelm their foes with brute force and dark magic. In Legion, Death Knights became very narrowly focused thematically around their spec. For example, Frost Death Knights having an overwhelming majority of their spells be Frost theme only. In Shadowlands, we are unifying the core Death Knight kit by restoring many abilities back to all specs including popular utility options from the past. A lot of my Death Knight friends that have read this already have said, yes, I like that. Give me more options. More options means you can have more varied raid encounters, which means you might be able to break the game a little bit. I always like that. I raided with a Death Knight for a long time, he was another player, and he would try to break his class as often as possible. Very good tank. Anyways, let's go down to our general changes. Once these changes are live, all Death Knights will be able to desecrate the ground around them with unholy magic to deal damage to their enemies with Death and Decay, or neutralize their attacks with Anti-Magic Zone. Furthermore, every Death Knight will once again be able to tap into the unnatural powers to temporarily turn themselves into undead with Lichborn, or use Raise Dead to summon a ghoulish servant to fight alongside them. The new Sacrificial Pact ability enables Death Knights to perform a forbidden ritual, sacrificing one of their undead minions, siphoning their health and causing them to explode and deal damage to nearby enemies. Finally, the Frosty Grasp of Chains of Ice will once again bind enemies of all Death Knights. Okay, so that's pretty good general changes. Let's take a look at Blood. At home in the Shadowlands and amongst their fellow dead, Blood Death Knights can learn new abilities and talents. Blood Tap allows Death Knights to consume essence from slain enemies to generate 1 rune, and is repeatable whenever a Bone Shield charge is used. Blood Death Knights will also get Rune Tap without needing to select it as a talent. Relish in Blood will significantly heal those bloody bruisers for each active Bone Shield charge, and grant 5 runic power whenever Death and Decay is cast, while Crimson Scourge is active. Okay, so a couple of small changes there to start off with, not a bad idea. After all, Blood Tap, Rune Tap, I know that a lot of the more skilled Death Knights like being able to play with their meters and their runes and use them in kind of a synchronistic fashion. So, big fan of that. And then, of course, anytime you get an extra heal that plays off your mitigation, a big fan of that. Especially, as a tank. That's your whole job. Let's look at Frost. Memories of the Lich King's legendary sword, Frostmourne, stirs in the hearts of Frost Death Knights, who can again choose between 2 one-handed weapons or 1 two-handed weapon to cut down their foes. The harsh lessons learned on the frozen tundra of Northrend have manifested into new abilities and talents. The iconic Frostworm's Fury will be accessible to all Frost Death Knights rather than needing to be selected as a talent. Hypothermic Presence is a new talent that halves the runic power cost of abilities for a moderate amount of time, giving the Death Knight the vigor to strike down all who stand against them. Okay, so that creates burst windows, lines up cooldown, sets up for potential moments of glory. Let those Frost Knights top the meters and strike down all those who stand before them. I don't even play a Frost Knight, but that sounds cool. I like that. I always like seeing new interplay of abilities, and I like burst windows. Burst windows can be a lot of fun because you can really see how you can maximize stuff, and as long as it's not too RNG heavy, then you have full control, and well, it's a lot of fun. Finally, Unholy. While all Death Knights have some ability to control and reanimate undead minions, an Unholy Death Knight has chosen to specialize in necromantic magic, and their abilities should reflect that. All Unholy Death Knights will be able to use Summon Gargoyle, previously a talent, to bring these flying terrors to their side. Army of the Damned, which is a talent, returns as an even stronger force with a familiar and faithful recruit, a Magus of the Dead. These formidable magic wielders have fought side by side with Maldraxxus Bannermen, and their presence rallies Unholy Death Knight's ghoulish armies, lobbing Frostbolt and Shadowbolt spells into the enemy. Death Coil and Epidemic casts will reduce Army of the Dead's cooldown, allowing Unholy Death Knights to summon forth a relentless stream of monstrosities into battle. Magus of the Dead will also fight by a Death Knight's side when they cast Apocalypse, which also benefits from a cooldown reduction whenever Death Coil and Epidemic are cast. Unholy Death Knight's Mastery, Dreadblade, will benefit both Master and Servant by also increasing the Death Knight's shadow damage and the damage of their ghoulish minions, allowing undead armies to trample all in their wake. Okay, so that was our first class and the philosophy overviewing Shadowlands on the Death Knight. So what do you think of the Death Knight? Has any of the changes or any of the, I guess, reversions, as it may be, sparked your interest? You're going to go Unholy and summon minions? Maybe freeze enemies in place with Malice as Frost? Or be the Blood Death Knight and be like, ha ha, you can't strike me down. Wah! Tell me what you think in the comments below. And of course, for those hanging out here, we will have more videos coming up soon. My name was Nim, or Nimicry if you're feeling professional. And thanks for watching.